Studying or teaching abroad can be an exciting opportunity. It can also come with a lot of uncertainties when it comes to accessing care. Cigna StudyWell from Cigna Global Health Benefits was designed specifically with your globally mobile students and faculty in mind. They'll have access to the largest global network of healthcare providers, plus a wide array of 24/7 support resources. So they'll have peace of mind, knowing that when they're away from home, they're not far from care. To learn more about Cigna StudyWell plan options, contact your Cigna representative.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back. I would like to introduce our next speaker, Melissa Gerhardt-Moreno. She is the Chief Information Officer of Cybersecurity and Infrastructure at the global analytics firm Gallup. She is responsible for all of the systems, networks, and databases that support Gallup's client work and internal operations, as well as the security that protects all of those assets. She believes in creating a culture of cybersecurity through reliable infrastructure and uncomplicated technology education. We all like uncomplicated. So Gallup recently did a study in partnership with Google to better understand the perceptions of computer science education and access to it in the US in grades K through 12. It surveyed not only students, but also parents, teachers, and administrators as well. And it was part of a series of studies launched 5 years ago on computer science, which of course is a critical subject matter to obtaining jobs in the all-important STEM fields. The US Bureau of Labor Statistics estimates that computer and IT jobs will grow much faster than the average for all occupations over the next decade, just to give you an idea of the importance and the tremendous growth. So, Melissa, some of the finds of the study were quite striking and at times sobering, especially when it came to girls and young women. So can you start by highlighting just some of the more interesting findings of the study?
Yeah, thank you, Anna. So Gallup's been working with Google for many years on these types of projects. And when we looked at this specific project, we wanted to make sure we were looking at computer science as specific to computer science and making sure that everyone had the correct definition of computer science. So we wanted to make sure that when people are answering this survey, they looked at it in terms of thinking about studying computers like design or hardware, machine learning, artificial intelligence. Wanted just to make sure that they weren't thinking that computer science might be using a computer to create a presentation or doing online research. So when we're looking at this, we're really thinking about hardcore computer science that's going to prepare these students for degrees in computer science or future careers there. So we spoke, like you said, with students, teachers, administrators about grades 7 through 12 computer science education. And we had some really, really good findings. So parents and educators, they value computer science education. So I think that's a really good thing for America today. 67% of parents agree that learning computer science is important or very important for their children. And 62% of parents say their kids will need computer science for their career someday, whether that is specifically in computer science or possibly a related field. A majority of teachers and administrators saying computer science is as important to offer to students as other core subjects like math or English or science. And 77% of high school principals, 64% of middle school principals, and 21% of elementary school principals said they have dedicated computer science classes where it is core computer science curriculum. So that's really great news. Half of the students that we included in the study said that computer science is taught in their school in a dedicated class, and 68% of those students said that they have learned some computer science. So we have dedicated classes to computer science in schools. That's good. We have parents that think computer science is important for their children to learn. That's good. We have school administrators that believe computer science is as important to learn as other core subjects. So that's good. But these things haven't really translated into classroom success yet. So as we dug deeper, only 27% of teachers say they're satisfied with the availability of computer science classes for the students in their school. So we have classes, but the teachers aren't satisfied that we have enough or they're readily available for the children. And when we look at the schools that do have dedicated computer science classes, enroll in those classes. So of the students that do enroll in the classes, only 15% of the girls in the school enroll in those classes versus 27% for boys. We also found some pretty significant disconnects when we're looking at how the different groups that we talk to perceive computer science education. So we found that nearly 6 in 10 superintendents agree or strongly agree that computer science is a top priority in their school district. And that's up from when we asked the same question in 2016, only 33% said the same thing. So almost 6 in 10 today, about 3 in 10 back in 2016, but only 28% of principals and 18% of teachers say it gets top priority. So there is a disconnect there between what administrators think is occurring in their districts and what the people in the schools are seeing and feeling as it relates to those priorities. We also have a disconnect in what is computer science. So I was specific with what the definition of it was earlier, and students, they agree with that definition. They know what computer science is, but it seems like teachers and parents are less clear on what is computer science today. So making sure that the classes that we have that are dedicated to computer science or that include computer science within other classes are true classes that are going to prepare them for those future careers and not things that are more like office productivity tools and things like that. So there's a disconnect there. But the biggest disconnect is that students have a disconnect with everybody, it seems, on the importance of learning computer science. So while their teachers and their parents feel it's very important, students are unconvinced that computer science is important for them to learn. So when we looked at the students, only 38% of students in grades 7 through 12 are at least somewhat interested in learning computer science. And it gets worse when you look at the gender breakdown. So 50% of boys express some interest in learning computer science, but only 25% of girls express any interest. When we ask them, do you think it's important for you to learn computer science? 49% of boys thought it was important that they learn computer science, but only 31% of girls think it's important that they learn computer science. We also found that exposure to computer science is really important to students' attitudes towards computer science. So if they spend just 1 hour a week on computer science education, both boys and girls are likely to say it's important that they learn it. But if they spend no time in computer science education classes, only 26% of our students agree that it's important that they learn it. So unfortunately, most kids report that they don't spend any time learning computer science in school. So we don't have the kids seeing that importance because they're not touching it or feeling it or seeing how it could relate to them.
Right. And, I think, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say on the other end of the spectrum, when we do have kids that invest a lot of time into computer science education, like 5 hours a week or more, see that of those that spend that kind of time, 13% of those students are boys and only 6% of girls. So we see a lower number of girls than boys that are investing that time.
I think what's really striking about that is we've been talking for so many years about improving and including young girls in the STEM fields. And I'm sure it's frustrating to see that there is this sizable gender gap in terms of confidence and interest in learning computer science, and that it hasn't budged much over the last 4 years since you've been conducting this study. And obviously, with all of the talk of the racial disparities, I think it's also important to note that the differences were not as stark along racial lines. They're fairly level among Black students, Hispanic students, and white students. So really, I think it was eye-opening to see this pronounced gender gap. I mean, obviously, it begs the question, what can we do? You have people, parents, educators overwhelmingly agree computer science is important. And as you said, exposure is very key to kind of, rectifying some of these gaps. But, what can educators, what can we do to convince kids this is important, and specifically young girls?
Well, I think we have teachers that are encouraging kids to pursue computer science education and computer science careers more often than we have parents encouraging their children to do that. So I think parents all understand that or many parents understand that it's important and would love it if their children pursued a degree in this, but are they actively encouraging them? And then when we look at the gender breakdown, parents are more likely to encourage boys than girls to pursue a career in computer science. So we did ask the question, have you encouraged your children? And 46% of boys' parents said that they were eager for their son to have a career in computer science. And only 27% of girls' parents said the same thing for their daughter. We still aren't getting that translation from wanting our children to pursue this, understanding it's a career field that can provide a really great lifestyle for children, but then talking to the kids about that and encouraging them to pursue it. So one thing that was encouraging though is that kids, when we asked them, would your parents be supportive of you pursuing a degree in computer science? They saw their parents, yes, they would be supportive of that. The problem is they're just not aspiring to those careers. So we need to continue to encourage our children to pursue a career in computer science, especially girls. Personally, one thing that I think is important that we provide with kids is more information on what the career looks like. So it doesn't necessarily mean you're sitting behind a desk and coding all day. There's a lot of different avenues that technology can take in a career. And we also need to talk about the difference that it makes to people. So what can technology do to help people in their lives? Because I think that speaks to girls too, of wanting to help other people, and using technology in that way can be a really powerful tool to help people. I also think we need to be encouraging our children that computer science is important for them to learn, even if they don't see themselves in a computer science specific discipline someday. Because computer science is really embedded into medicine, into business. There are so many different aspects of it that will make them more successful in their careers if they invest the time early. So I think when we see more women graduating college than men, we see them pursuing degrees in medicine and related fields like that, understanding how computer science can really help them in those areas and help them help people in those areas too.
Yeah.
We also saw that having that exposure of 1 hour a week to computer science really helps students understand and value computer science education. So making more opportunities for them to have that exposure is important.
Yeah. And as you said, I mean, every field, and also, as we've been talking about over the last 2 days, pandemic has heightened our awareness of the importance of being digitally savvy, as you said, not just necessarily if you're going into, a field of coding, for example. I wonder, I know we've been writing and covering the issue of women in STEM fields for so long. And I wonder if part of it is, that, hey, we've been talking about this issue for so long, we've kind of taken care of it. Is there kind of this assumption on the part of parents, but more so schools and educators that, wow, this issue has been in, the forefront for years. We're offering this in this class. Is the job done? Do you think there's a little bit of that mentality at play?
I think that could definitely be occurring because it has been a discussion, my entire career and before my career. So I could see that people are kind of tired of talking about it, or just assume that it's being taken care of, because they are doing some really good things. They are offering the classes. They're incorporating computer science into other core classes. So they're doing good work. It's just that it's not following all the way through into those careers. And we're still seeing such huge gender gaps in the career, in the computer science career field. And so it takes a lot of time to build those pipelines of students in K through 12 that then move on to college or directly into a career in some cases. But then when they get into the computer science or a technology related field, how do we keep them in there too? Because there's a lot of exit points, especially for women, that you see when you look at technology, because it's a male dominated field. Women still have more demands on their time in a lot of cases when it relates to families than men do. And so how are we not only doing things good up front, but making sure that we're retaining those girls and those women in the education and the career fields all the way through, so that when we're selecting leaders for technology and other positions, we still have a pool of women to look at that could be considered for those leadership roles.
Right. Well, and certainly, it's important that Gallup is highlighting this issue in depth, and the information is available. It's kind of up to everybody to raise awareness of this issue, but who do you think can play a role, for instance, in helping parents, understand that this is, still a large gender gap, and to encourage them, helping educators. I mean, are we talking about the federal government? Obviously, private sector, everyone has a role to play, but what are some of your thoughts on where people can be proactive in this?
So I think it's important for the private sector to step up in some of these areas. It's really hard to get qualified computer science teachers in the public school system, because if they're qualified to teach computer science, they're probably qualified to do computer science, and they'd probably make more money in industry. So it's really hard to get dedicated computer science teachers. A lot of times we see schools taking a math teacher and making them a computer science teacher, and that's great. But we know that in industry, like in my company, we have a lot of really talented developers that absolutely could go into schools and help the students learn. And we do that. So I think industry has if they're the ones that are going to benefit in the end, in a lot of cases, from having more students to select from for their technology jobs. And so you have to work earlier in the funnel to get students there. So how can industry get into classrooms and teach classes? And there are some regulatory issues with that, at least in my state, where there are some certifications that you have to teach children and all of that. So how can we get through some of those too, where we wouldn't necessarily require someone to have a teaching certificate to teach a class? So I think that is one thing that in corporate America we need to think about, is how we're giving forward. I wouldn't even call it giving back, but giving forward, because we're the ones that are going to reap a lot of these benefits if we can encourage more children to study this and to follow through into their careers.
Mm-hmm. And now you mentioned, of course, that computer science touches on so many other fields, and that certainly includes the well, I don't want to say emerging, because it's been around for now a while, but cybersecurity, which you are very familiar with. And I mean, this is really one of these fields where the opportunities are so great. What are you seeing? Any general observations on the teaching of cybersecurity? In your particular expertise, and and any thoughts on women becoming involved in it?
So I live in Omaha, Nebraska, and we actually have 2 schools in Omaha that are national centers of cybersecurity excellence. So we see great students coming out of these programs. Also means we have a lot of competition from a lot of different companies and government organizations for that talent. But we are seeing really solid cybersecurity education at the college level that's really preparing students for jobs in a lot of different areas. We're seeing 0 unemployment. So I sit on the board of the University of Nebraska, Omaha, their cybersecurity program, and every single student that graduates has a job. And that's, the kids that are just hoping that degree is signed, when they're walking across the stage. There's great opportunities there. I am seeing that there's more female students in those classes, so that's really exciting for me. But cybersecurity is an area that, it pays really well because we don't have enough people in it. It's a job that is different every single day because all of the different threats out there are changing all the time. But really, it's an area where we have to get more diversity, because you have to be able to think like a hacker. And all the hackers aren't, white men of a certain age. They're coming from all over the world. They're coming from different generations and all of that. So if your team of cybersecurity analysts and your ethical hackers all look the same, they probably all kind of think the same. So it's really important, in my opinion, to have more diversity in the cybersecurity, so that we're thinking more broadly, and we're trying to think, we always have to be one step ahead of all the nation states and the hackers that are coming after us. So encouraging women and minorities is so important in that area, in my opinion, so that we can be more, we have more ground to cover with different ideas, different backgrounds, different ways of approaching problems.
Mm-hmm. Now, speaking of diversity, a running theme that we've been talking about, of course, is the disparities that the pandemic has exacerbated, that, disparities that have long existed, in terms of gender, minority, low income, high income. Now the study was conducted before the pandemic. So, of course, I know difficult to kind of gauge statistically what the impact of the pandemic has been, but, what are some of your concerns of the growth in reliance on virtual learning, virtual connectivity that is testing and revealing a lot of the disparities, I would say, between the have and the have-nots. And then we've also talked on the other side of the silver lining of being more aware of these disparities, and hopefully the pandemic, motivating people to be more urgent about addressing them. What are some of your thoughts on the pandemic's impact?
I think you stated it very well. It's really the haves versus the have-nots. And when you think about children being educated, missing out on an entire year of a quality education because they don't have internet access, or maybe their parents have to go to work, so they're not there to help them through their technical issues, just like any distance learning is going to have from time to time. Those are key years. How are we going to make up for that? I don't know that we can. Yeah. And so I do hope that urgency is there, that we can't just talk about the disparity. We have to act. We need our school districts to be able to provide devices to children that don't have devices. Internet access is so important. And these are big problems. Like, I'm glad I'm not a superintendent of a major school district, because these are huge problems to try and address. You've got the money, of course, but you've got the logistics of being able to get all of these devices to children and helping them understand how to use them, although the kids figure that out pretty quickly. But I think it definitely highlights what this disparity is, and we have to act quickly to try and get that year back. But to make sure that we realize that it wasn't just the pandemic with disparity. That's been there for forever. So how do we, now that we know it's in there, how do we act quickly to make sure that it wasn't a one-time thing with the pandemic, but we've built this into our curriculum and our plans going forward? Right.
And as the study shows, the gender gap has been there and, has not improved the way that people would like to have seen, or perhaps expected it to by now. Now, you yourself have spent your education, your career in science, and could you just offer some of your personal perspectives on what helped motivate you throughout the years, but also the challenges that you encountered?
Yeah. So I've worked in technology for my whole career. So for 20 years, I've been a technologist. And I did not originally start out studying technology. I changed my major to management information systems about my junior year. I originally was in engineering. So I've always been in male-dominated fields, and I'm comfortable with that, but not all girls would be as comfortable, I'm sure. What I've seen in my experiences, I also work in infrastructure and cybersecurity, which is extremely male-dominated. So when I joined my division as the leader, there were, so we had about 75 people around the world, and 2 were women. I was the 3rd woman. So we had a lot of work to do to improve that gender gap. And we've made progress, but it is hard when you don't have candidates, you don't have female candidates to even interview, which means you can't even consider in a lot of cases. But I think what I've seen is when there's a lot of meetings where I'm the only woman in the room. It even sounds different when I walk in because I wear different shoes than the men do.
I know that feeling.
And I think one thing that I personally have done is I could choose to feel different. I could choose to feel like I was put into the position because I'm a woman or things like that. But I know that's not the case. I choose to lead with the confidence that I was put into my position because I was the best person for that job. I try and lead knowing that there's things that I do that others on my team don't do as well as I do. So there's things that they don't like to. They don't like to communicate with the end users. They don't want to take something that's really complex and put it into terms that are easy for other people to understand the implications. They don't love to collaborate with other teams to think about all the downstream impacts. Those are things that I can do really well. So I've always focused on the things that I do well and the value that I bring, and how we don't have a lot of well-rounded people on my team. We've got experts in different areas. And so the team itself is well-rounded, but individuals aren't necessarily well-rounded in all these different areas. So how can I use the things that I'm really good at to make our team stronger? And those are the things that I've chosen to focus on in my career, the things that I do really well, the positive side of that, instead of focusing on the things that are different about me or how I don't fit in with the bigger group. Right. So that's, I guess, personally what's worked for me.
Great. Well, we do have a question and on something that we talked about of, how can, are there any suggestions, I guess for educators really, to show students that computer science is not just about coding? Do you think there might be some technology? We talked earlier in the day about virtual reality, simulating going to space, for instance. Are there ways that educators can make this an exciting, enticing field for the students so that they understand, as you said, it's not just about sitting in front of a computer all day?
Yeah, I think the more partnerships we can have with industry, where we could have students shadow technologists and see that they're not sitting at their desk all day, they're going to meetings, they're collaborating with people, they're working on challenging problems. I think the more that we can do that, the more students can see what the job is. And I think that's especially important for girls, because then they can see women doing that job, because they may not know any women that are in technology. But if you go into a company that has, at least, as good a gender balance as we see across the industry as a whole, then they can see women being successful in that role, which then helps them see that they could be successful in that role. So I think anytime we can get any type of internships and mentorships, I think those are so important for students to be able to see that there's a future there, and to experience what the job is and maybe overcome some of those preconceived notions about what computer science is.
Right. Oh, excellent, excellent. So do you have any kind of parting thoughts on either the study or just in general getting girls more into computers?
The one thing that I would say that I think we need to talk more, especially to girls, about is pay. So that is, in the United States, we don't talk a lot about pay. We want our children to find jobs that they love, and we want them to love what they do. Well, you can love what you do and still make a good living. And so that is something that I feel is especially important for girls, is talk about what kind of lifestyle do you want. Technology careers can provide you, a really great lifestyle, not only monetarily, but they give you a career that's always going to change, is always going to be challenging. You're always going to have new things to learn. And so thinking about, what do you want your life to look like, and how can your job help you get those things in your life?
Right. No, a very excellent point, because we have talked a lot about college affordability and the investment in it, and choosing careers, again, not just that you love, but that, can sustain you financially. And that's, it's an investment. College is an investment in that respect. And so, certainly you need a career that can pay dividends, and the STEM careers are, arguably where it's at. So, well, speaking of technology, we're going to take a break. Again, I would encourage participants, if you go on your left-hand side at the bottom, you have an Expo button. You can go over to several booths. We have at the Cigna booth, there is a raffle to win a UV sterilizing sanitizing box, which is pretty cool, and unfortunately pretty nifty in this day and age of pandemic, so it will certainly come in handy. You can also chat or watch videos at Georgetown University, Merit Academy, Sahori booths. And then above that, you have a networking button, and that will allow you to connect directly with participants. You can say hello. It's a brief chat. If you wanted to continue the chat, there's a button on your top right-hand side. So if you have an interesting conversation, want to keep it going, you can do that as well. And then we will be back in about 15 minutes, and we will have panelists from the embassies of China, Indonesia, and Saudi Arabia to kind of offer their firsthand diplomatic perspective on trends in international education. So stay tuned, and thank you very much, Melissa, for being with us and for all of your insights. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Anna.